Hello, Malhar, you're on mute again. I realize almost every Thursday when I come on, that's the first thing I say. Hello, Malhar, you're on mute.
You're muted.
You're muted. Okay, welcome to our April summary show, Leadership in Flow Asia. So in April, our theme was value-driven relevance, right? And for all our viewers who have logged into our show, welcome. Thank you very much that you're here. What is the Leadership in Flow Asia all about? The Leadership in Flow Asia is where we interview leaders, practitioners on the ground, to understand their growth stories, their personal growth, their leadership growth, and how that impacts their business growth. And for the month of April, right, we had three beautiful, powerful leaders that we interviewed. One is Jonathan, one is Mylene, and one is Felix. And we learned a lot from them. We learned a lot, and I'm really glad. Now, Malhar, you have been through all three guests. You heard from them. You asked them a lot of questions. Can you share with us any trends that you've seen or any characteristics that you've seen that you want to talk about from a leadership point of view?
Hi, Walid. Hi, Ashok. Thank you very much.
Hello.
I get very excited when it comes to this summary show, right? Because
Okay.
I get to connect the dots in my head, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And thank you for encouraging me to do this. And I did say hi to Walid. Yeah. So
Yes, you did.
I just thought, last month we spoke about authenticity, and this month I thought, our audience who are quietly following us would welcome a tool,
Okay.
a process, right? So I thought I will introduce a process that I use for me to understand leaders, known as leadership identity. So basically, we're talking about identity. So Ashok,
Identity. Okay.
identity. So when I say identity, right? So when I say, oh, okay, what's your identity? What comes to your mind?
Oh, good question. Father, son, husband.
So those are roles.
Roles. Okay. See, that's why we need you on the show, right? So what
I know,
is my identity?
but exactly that's really important because our identity shows up through our roles.
Okay.
Right? And if you're not clear about your identity, then that's when you're like, okay, when it comes to your role, it can be a little bit confusing, right? So
Fair enough.
our identity shows up through in many spaces, and our roles are one space where our identity shows up. So for me, the simplest way of understanding identity is whenever we say things directly and indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, when we are telling to ourselves and to people who we are. Who am I? I am Indian. I am Tamil speaking. I love black. I'm hot-tempered. Whenever you describe yourself,
Okay.
that's parts of your identity that's coming through.
Okay.
So I do think identity is complex, but today we're going to focus on leadership identity.
Okay.
Now, what do I mean by leadership identity? The three leaders that we spoke about, and in fact, every other leader that we interview, right? They show who they are through the conversation that we have.
Yes.
All right. And we want to be able to figure out that we are always giving out a part of ourselves, unless you don't participate in life, right? So everything that you say or do, right, shows a part of you willingly or unwillingly. And
Okay.
these is parts of your identity. So what I'm going to do, Ashok, maybe what we can do is that if you're okay, I will just share a slide that I have and then we talk through that, if that's okay with you.
No, definitely, because I think I definitely need more clarity.
Ah, okay, so
Okay,
this is so I'll just explain to our audience now. For those who
please do.
are on LinkedIn and very quiet, say hello to us. Just as how Walid and Gerald has said hello to us. Walid, thank you. Gerald, thank you. Please go ahead and put down your own definition of identity so that we can talk about it. Hi, Kenneth. Thank you for saying hello too. Now, so when we talk about identity or leadership identity, who am I in my leadership role? So just like when you said, I'm a father, I'm a son, you were talking about a role. So leadership is a role, right?
Okay.
But it's just a role. Our role comes alive when we know who we are, right? So who are we? And that's our personal identity. I am very sure we can't separate personal identity with leadership identity. If your personal identity is clear, then your leadership identity becomes clear too. If it's not, then we have confusion, right? So let's
Yep.
look at it and let me just explain to you how this works. And people who are with us, feel free to ask me questions, simply because I would like to get more clarity about how this works too, right? Now, so I think a lot of us are aware of what we call the iceberg theory. Now, the iceberg theory is really about our mind, and our mind is not in our brain,
Okay.
right? So, what is our mind? Our mind, you can actually divide it into three areas: conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. All right.
Okay.
Now, conscious is what we are aware of about ourselves, right? Subconscious is, I'm not too sure. Sometimes it show up, sometimes it doesn't show up, right? Unconscious are things that we really don't know, and events in life will introduce ourselves to us, right? If we are open, right? So this is what actually happens, right? Now, a lot of times when we are trying to understand behavior, we identify, we understand behavior, and we make conclusions, i.e., judgments about people based on what we see, which is at the top.
Okay.
But what makes them behave this way, or what makes us behave this way, is all the other things. That's your iceberg, 85%, which comes through your purpose, your values, and your beliefs, that is actually driving our behaviors.
Okay.
All right. So if you look what's below the iceberg, not all the time. Sometimes with some people, we are able to surface our beliefs, we are able to surface our values, we are able to surface our purpose. But most of the time, it tends to be more hidden than surface. It doesn't show up so easily. Again, even with emotions, most of us would show our emotions, all right, but not all. A lot of our real, true emotions are hidden. Sometimes even we don't know about it. Some of our emotions are at unconscious level because we don't know that's what we're feeling, because we've practiced enough not to feel our emotions, right? Now, so if you think about it, all of these are an accumulation of our continuous thought patterns, thinking patterns. Now, our thinking, again, a lot of us believe that we know who we are because we know how we think. But really, science is proving us more and more that uh, what we know about ourselves is very little, maybe about 15%. In
Really?
fact, yeah, yeah. In fact, if you Google unconscious mind, and that's why if you think about it, the popular belief about the mind is that we only use 10% of our mind or brain. But that's because we are limiting that to this part of our whole system, your brain, your
Okay.
conscious brain, right? But when we talk about the mind now, science is revealing that your mind is in every cell of your body. It acts on its own, and it acts as a whole. So we are an integrated self that we need to come together, right, and work together. A lot of times we have believed that the cognitive part, especially the logical thinking, to be the mind. Well, that's the 10% that we've always been talking about.
Okay.
All right. So when it comes to leadership identity, so what we are going to do today is that I thought let's look at what the speakers have shared,
Mm,
right?
mm,
In this
mm.
one session, what they have said. We're going to take what they said and figure out a way to interpret what is showing up in terms of their purpose, value, beliefs, emotions, and behaviors and thoughts.
Okay. Okay. So
Immaterial, whether they're conscious or not. Okay, I'm done.
okay. So no. Thank you for sharing this. This is very important because I think a lot of times when we are in organization and we show our competency and we get promoted and we move up the ladders and we start looking after people, we take on different type of roles and leadership responsibilities and all. But I think this is something that what you just brought about is something very important for all of us to understand, not only leaders but all of us to understand that who are we actually, right? And what you're sharing is uh, we some of us are aware, some of us are not aware, you know, about how our purpose, values, beliefs, emotions, thoughts are actually shaping our identity, right? Okay, so let me then talk about Jonathan, right? Remember Jonathan, the HR practitioner? Well, he I really enjoyed his sessions, right? His session, he really shared a lot of business ideas, business tools, you know. So let me just look at some things that he shared. Then maybe you can give us a bit more context based on this model. Okay.
Right.
Now, Jonathan, I know he shared about using business tools to show the impact of HR. Now, he's very clear that HR needs to add value. HR needs to be very strategic.
Mm.
And so, therefore, he talked about value chain analysis, even in organizational charts. He puts in the clients and the revenues that department brings in. So he is very clear from a behavior point of view. I'm assuming that's behavior, right? If I'm wrong, please do correct me, right? Now, at the same point of time, right, he shared about certain belief that he had. You know, he constantly talked about people can be better than who they are, but they had a sort of a limiting belief. He mentioned that a couple of times.
Mm.
He even talked about in the HR space, you are better than who you are. But tell us a little bit more about what is that belief and where does that come from? And how does that relate to identity?
Right. So again, right, Jonathan, I let's hope let's I'm sure Jonathan will listen to this much later and give us feedback. So we're not saying this is what who Jonathan really is,
Sure,
but
sure.
what we're looking at is the behaviors that Jonathan showed up through what he said, through the
Okay,
thoughts
okay,
that he shared, and the
okay.
behavior in the show, right? So that's the behavior. His thoughts came through his behavior. Now he did show some of his emotions. Let's look at just what you've just mentioned, right? He said,
Mhm.
people have limiting beliefs.
Okay.
So what is his belief here? He believes that people have limiting beliefs.
Mm.
So
Okay.
when he believes that people have limiting beliefs, what is the belief that is driving him? That he should set people free.
Yes, yes. He showed that. He talked about that.
Right. So if you look at his actions and the kind of leader he was always trying to liberate people so that the best self comes, because they don't believe in themselves. He helps them to see the best of themselves. So
Okay,
if you
so
think about it, his belief is to set people free from their limiting beliefs.
okay, okay.
Does it
Now,
make sense?
no, it makes sense. It makes sense. So I'm very curious here. How much of that is then driven by the values that he holds?
Now, so let's look
And
at, let's
okay,
assume, now we are assuming, let's assume that, now we don't know whether he's conscious about this belief. What he's
okay,
conscious is, or what he's aware is that people have limiting beliefs. That's what he believes. That's what he said.
yes,
He
yes.
said it, so that's what I suppose he is aware of, right?
Mhm.
But now we're looking a little bit deeper and saying, so if he believes that people need to be liberated, that's his inner belief, right? That's driving him to set people free. That's a behavior.
Okay,
That's where the emotion, his passion to work with people comes. The passion to solve problem comes, right? Can you see that emotion? He's very driven emotionally, right? Now,
Yes.
if he believes, let's assume we are correct, and if he believes that he needs to do something to liberate people and set people free in his role, what is the
Okay.
value? The value is for people to be respected or to have equal opportunities to showcase their talent. So the
All
value
right.
that I would guess would be along the line of respect or equality.
Okay. Okay.
Can you see that? Now,
Yep. Yep.
if you dig further, why or how is this value serving his purpose? What's his
Mm.
purpose in HR? His purpose in HR is to bring the best out of people. So if you remember Jonathan's story, he had a very interesting story and an interesting transition where he got into you do you remember that story?
Yeah, where I think he had a choice. He was told to go into the logistics space, and the example he was given was his manager took a spanner, threw it on the floor, and said, "Listen, see, the spanner doesn't talk back to you, so that's why you shouldn't join HR. You should join logistics." But he wanted to go there, but then the logistics was then outsourced to a third party, so therefore he had no choice but to join HR.
Right.
Yeah.
And when he joined HR, he found a purpose, right? Very, very
Yes.
clearly, because his purpose was, again and again, he reiterates in his story, is to bring the best out of people. Because on one hand, he came across very passionate about people. On the
Yes.
other hand, he was also very assertive. If you don't perform, if you're not good enough, I'm going to talk to you. But after which, brother, if you're not if you're not the best fit, maybe you don't belong here. It's not punitive, it's to bring the
Yes.
best out of the people, right? So
Oh, fair
what
enough.
he's
Yeah.
actually doing is that he's serving the value of respect or equality, based on our interpretation, to serve the organizational purpose. What is organizational purpose? Right, so if you look at organizational purpose, right, every organization wants to make a difference. Every role has a purpose to make a difference. If a role doesn't have a purpose, the role becomes irrelevant,
Okay. Okay. Now
right?
I just want to just dive into what I'm looking at your slide here. All
Mm,
right. So what I'm hearing from you is, yeah, you're right. When Jonathan was telling us a story, right? It went back to the fact that he had a purpose. He was very clear that through his role, right, he can make an impact. He can help people, and that is why he
mm,
was continuously looking at how he can help not only the business but the people within the business. Now
mm.
here it says here purpose. I see a survive, strive, thrive. What do you mean by that? Maybe you can just share a little
Okay.
bit so our audience can understand.
Okay, yeah, people who are listening, right? I mean, you please feel free to put in your thoughts because it's something, a new aha moment I had as I was preparing this, right? When we think about purpose, we always think about purpose as if it's very noble. It has to be for greater good, right?
Okay.
That's how purpose is sold to us, meaning and purpose, right? And if we really think about it, a man's search for meaning sounds noble, but before anything noble, the whole idea, the book, the reason the book man's search of meaning is is a bestseller today is because the first thing is for us to all survive.
Okay.
And think about COVID times, all right? We did not think about business growth if we were in the survival space. We were looking at how do we first stay alive and survive through every day because we didn't know what we were dealing with.
Mm,
Now, once you survive, then you realize you can breathe a little bit and strive. What is strive? And Ashok, I got this from you. Strive is survive is just learning how to be alive every day.
okay.
Strive is having some goals and say, now that I've survived, maybe I can stretch myself and be better, having goals.
Mm,
Right now, thrive is a place, of course, we call it our flow states. Thrive is when our best self emerges.
got it. Got it.
All right.
So,
And if you look at every purpose, we are sometimes a combination of three,
mm,
sometimes a
mm,
combination of whatever that works for us at that time.
mm, mm. So what I'm hearing is survive, thrive, strive, thrive is not linear in that way. It
No,
can flow back, and at any point of time in our lives, we can go back to survive,
exactly.
right? Yeah, because it depends on what's the circumstance and situation that we are in. Okay, okay. Thank you for giving that clarity on that purpose itself. Okay, so what I'm hearing about Jonathan now, I'm clearer, right?
Mhm.
You've said that he has a very clear purpose of how he's impacting, making a positive impact as a HR to the business
Mm,
and to individuals, right?
mm,
His values drive that, and he has certain beliefs, and he keep making sure that he gets the best out of people, even if he has to tell them to move out, improve. It is with the right. The purpose is very clear for him.
mm, mm,
Okay, okay. So, okay, so let me then just go to our next leader who came on board, Mylene,
mm.
right? Now, I think there's a pattern here. Jonathan didn't want to be HR. Mylene studied to be a lawyer at first,
Yeah.
right? But she didn't want to be a lawyer. Then she chose to go into the HR space,
Mm,
right? And in the HR space, she got opportunities to try out different projects about people at
mm,
for performance.
mhm,
And then when she got the opportunity itself, right? She she was very clear about how she wanted to drive the business outcomes through the HR identity, right?
mm, mm,
So if you remember, right, from a behavior point of view, all
mhm,
the actions she told us she took care of was care, actions to care. And she cared not only for her staff, but what matters to her staff. So she
mm,
went on to even explain how they had the best in class insurance, group insurance that not only covered the staff, but their parents and their in-laws, you know.
mm,
And she even talked about how when someone was moving from a different geography to a different country in that sense, they will
mm,
go through the finer details of even looking after their pets in that sense,
mm,
right? So those are the actions she talked about. Now, she, I remember she mentioned her belief also. It came out a
mhm,
few times in the conversation that we had. She said, "One must enjoy your work. Work is somewhere that you must grow." And she also talked about her personal experience where you should never give up and you learn to build confidence. But let me just talk about one must enjoy work, and work is where you must grow. That was a belief that she had.
mm.
So if I'm looking at that, and again looking at that leadership identity, right? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what that means as a leadership identity. How did that show up very strongly? Am I missing something else in terms of value? Just let us know.
Okay, okay. Well, again, Mylene is a good friend. So, Mylene, if you're listening to it later, tell me whether I got this right. Right now, so Mylene, so if you remember, why did she do law? Because she wanted to please her dad.
That is correct.
All right. So let's just go start from there. Right. Behavior
Okay,
is
okay.
I want to please my dad, as to
Mhm,
I want to tick the box and make sure I show my dad, I do my part for
mhm.
whatever reason culturally, right? Now,
Okay.
so the emotions that was attached to doing her law degree, right? I don't think she was excited. She just wanted to finish it. What's her belief?
Yes.
Right, right, so the emotion that showed up, so she finished it, she pushed it. So if you look, the purpose of her doing the law, right, was it
Mhm.
to survive, strive, or thrive? Did she thrive there?
No, I think more survive, right? Just to please a family.
Maybe
Okay.
she survived and she thrived, that's why she
Okay.
did, she
Okay.
finished,
Okay.
maybe,
Yeah.
right? She probably went in to survive in the family, or maybe to be in the good books with the dad, but she
Sure.
strived because she did well, I think, right?
Yeah.
Now, so if you just look at that, starting from why she did law, what were her value? Her values was just respect for her father, or love for her father, family values.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
what does she believe in? She probably believed that I need to honor my dad by doing what he asked me to do,
Hmm.
right? The emotion attached to that is probably she did it out of gratitude if it's positive.
Okay.
If it's negative, then it will be frustration. But I think, but she knew when to do, and she knew when to stop. So I've done the degree, all right? I'm going to stop now. And then what she does is that if you look, she re-looks at her purpose. Now, her purpose was really to serve people. She enjoyed being with people.
Mm.
All right. She doesn't enjoy fighting.
Okay.
All right. Because the role of being a lawyer didn't sit in well with her own identity as a person.
Mm.
If you remember her telling the story, it's not her. She can
Yeah.
do law, but she can't imagine doing the person that she will become.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
No offense to any lawyers, but it didn't sit in well with her, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
her purpose was very, very clear that she
Mm.
wanted to serve people in a particular way. And the value that showed up in HR for her is what? To really look after people, to bring their best out.
That is correct.
All
That is
right.
correct.
Now, look
Yes.
after is what? It's well being.
Okay. Okay.
Now, what did she believe? What does she believe throughout her role when she's working with people? Now, she believes two things. One is, I need you to bring your best self to work. But for you to bring your best self to work, you need to make sure that your loved ones are taken care of.
Mm. Mm.
Again, that's family, that's well being.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the story of Mylene, whether when she did law and how she showed gratitude to the father, there were two
Mm-hmm.
things there, right? The family value was very clear.
Yep. Yep.
So was her very own well-being. She knew that if she did something that she didn't enjoy, she is not going to be well as a person. That was clear for her. She did not articulate it that way, but she was very clear at a heart level that, hey, you know what? This is not me. I'm going to be true to myself and I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
well. I'm going to enjoy, so I'm going to choose HR. Now, if you look at it, it's a very similar pattern when she chose HR, and especially
Okay.
when she was given the role in Hilti, India,
Mm-hmm.
right, to start a software development organization to get talent for that, where she said they needed to compete with the top names. They were not
That's
even
right.
in the list, right? Now,
That's
what
right.
did she do? Her purpose was very clear then. Now, I need to make sure I get to the top list for us to meet our purpose. Because if we want our software development company in India to be good and we are going to compete with the big boys, we need to be first in the right space. Now, what
Mm.
will get us a space in the right space? We need to be seen to be one of the best. Now, right now, we don't have a background in the business. So, what we do,
Right.
let me find out what people need. What actually will make people feel worry free and come to work, right? People, that so what she recognized was family values was important for them, and so what they did is they gave the best and medical health,
Mm.
family values, well-being, which is then taken care through health, right? So what
Yeah.
she did, they put up the best healthcare
That's right.
insurance for the people. Now that's how
Mm.
they attracted people. Can you see the values?
Yes.
Now, why
Yes.
they believe? Their belief is this, right? So we are family. What is Hilti's values, right? We are family. So you are, you know how she went to the extent of looking after, what is the word that you use for the spouses? Was it
Uh,
trailing?
Trailing. Yes. Trailing spouse. Yeah.
Trailing spouse. So if you just understand the concept of trailing spouse, how much of importance they give to make sure the spouse stays happy,
Mm. Mm.
right? Now, why? If your spouse is happy, I know you will come to work worry free. Now, can you imagine how much of deep listening has gone into that?
Yeah.
So, can you see that? Again, her
Yes.
emotions is that of, enjoy. I enjoy my work. I don't know, at some point in her calm way, she said this, if my bosses are listening, please give me another challenge, is what she said.
Yes. Yes. Because she did say she enjoyed challenges.
Yeah. And and
Yes.
and the interesting thing about Mylene is that she enjoys challenges, but she's very clear that she is not successful because she's good, but she's successful in meeting the organizational purpose because she gets the right people on board. And to get
Yes.
the right people on board, her role is to make sure to understand what their needs are and making sure they are worry free when they come on board to work.
Yes. Okay. So what I'm hearing about Mylene is two things here. I see two paths here, right? At a personal level, yes, her value to complete her law degree, right?
Mm.
I'm looking at that. So what I'm hearing is then when she chose to go to HR, she said she was afraid. I remember she mentioned I was so afraid. I had to think long and hard about it because I was being watched. So I had to put my head down and really work hard and show up, and display, demonstrate that I was really good. So what I'm also hearing is yes, when she did her law degree, her family-related values drove her.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose was clear. But when she made that decision that this is not what she wanted to do, it was also values and purpose driven. And over time, I mean, she came across as she knew she was very quite clear about what was important for humans, for fellow colleagues. And
Mm-hmm.
with each project that she worked on, it confirmed for her it is about the care for others. It is about the care. It is about the care. It is about care. You know, and she finally got the opportunity to show up and demonstrate her beliefs, which are driven by her values and purpose in that sense,
And
right?
all of this helps her to express her identity.
As okay, so she has a role as a HR person, but her leadership identity is someone who cares.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. I see that.
And we better say hello to our counterpart. Sham!
Oh, hello from Perth.
Oh,
Yes.
Sham, I hope you're missing us. And she says, that's a brilliant model to work with. Okay, she has given us the okay, so we have passed the test. Ashok. Thank you, Sham. Glad that you've landed safely, and I hope you're missing us and missing the show. But thank you for not missing today's episode. All right.
Okay. Okay. So I understand the leadership identity better with Jonathan, and now that you explained with Mylene, it's so clear, right? So what I'm also hearing is your purposes and values can change over time. So I don't think you should be holding head fast and beating yourself. It does change, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does. It does. Now Felix, he's not a business in a corporate space, right? But he had a lot of individual development that he spoke about. He shared a lot of individual stories,
Mm,
his own personal stories,
mm,
where he had success in his business. He was authentic enough to say, or at least maybe courageous to say that he was arrogant, he was stubborn, he made a lot of mistakes, and because of that, his business was affected. He was under a lot of stress. He was suicidal. He mentioned once, I think twice, I can't remember, and then he finally said, okay, I will get a coach to help me, which he said he was
mm,
never open to in the past, you know.
mm,
Um, and and he and as his story shifted, right, we heard about the importance on working on me. He said the most important person to work on is I have to work on myself,
mm,
and that was the most important thing for him. And he
mm,
mentioned again, when I have personal breakthroughs, it equates to business breakthroughs. And that was his
mm.
belief again. So he was also in that journey of crystallizing his belief. And something else he mentioned was also business when done well, right, is a vehicle for personal development. I know we brought in Felix to talk about the advent of AI, but it was very interesting that he kept talking about personal development and humanizing that approach. And by the end of the show, what was quite clear is yes, AI is a tool,
Mm,
right? There are tools out there, but do not forget the human self itself,
mm,
right?
mm,
Because I guess a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? But he's but he spoke about focus on yourself so that any tool that you do, right, or you use, you still add value. And that is what came across in terms of his behaviors because he spoke about coaching others,
mm.
right? Coaching other people, right? And this is something he started to do, right? And emotions wise, okay, so he came across a bit angsty or angry. I could be saying the wrong words. Annoyed. Okay, annoyed would be more accurate, right? Where he spoke about, hey, you know what? Some of the coaches that he noticed were not stepping up and adding value to their coachees like the way he had benefited from his coach. So that's what prompted him to say, you know what? I want to coach others just like the way I was coached, and value was added to me. I want to add value.
Mm.
So that became his purpose. Would that be a fair statement?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, tell me more then.
I'm not sure because I'm going to do this with you. For those who are still with us, we're going to share with you another model. So stay with
Okay.
us. Right. So what's really interesting with Felix, like what I said, right? I'm like, we were going to talk about marketing and AI marketing, and he kept going to personal development. And that was really, I think at that moment, I was thinking like, okay, how can I ask this question differently? Because we kept going back over and over again. But I've learned how to value what he's passionate about. Right. Now, if you
Okay.
just think about Felix, right, in his own story of the so-called failed business and how he was arrogant, he claimed, right? If we think about in terms of purpose, right? When he was in that business,
Mhm.
Felix clearly went through survive, especially when he was depressed, when he thought
Okay.
he had failed. I mean, he was big enough to share that, and how he had to survive and then strive. So he talks about how he moved from having failed in the business and following his boss to learn. When we asked him the question about how did you get into social media marketing, right? When we were introduced, so he was actually learning how to first learn how to survive and then strive. But
Mm.
today, when he was in our show, when he was talking about it, did you see his how comfortable he was in his skin?
Yeah.
I won't say he's likable, and he knows that.
I liked him.
Yeah. So and that's really, I mean, I think in the last summary we spoke about authenticity.
Yep. Yep.
What I really appreciate about Felix is that he is so comfortable in his own skin, and he knows some people don't like it, and he's okay with that because
Mm.
he's clear about who he is, his identity,
Yes.
who
Yes.
he wants to lead. So, like you can see, he's angry about what he thinks as injustice. How can coaches not do justice to people who have entrusted their future with you? How can you do that?
Mm.
Is it a fair anger? I think he's fair.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
why he's very committed to in the way he wants to work with. Now, if you
Okay.
remember, I'm not sure whether, I think he said this in his pre-interview, he only wants to work with individuals and small organizations
That's right.
because
That's right.
he wants to do continuous work. He wants to help them build sustainable. But he's not focused on the business, he's focused on the individual.
Mm.
Because he says when you change, your business will change. When you
Right.
think well, you feel well, you act well, you can see the effect on your business, and that's his belief.
Mm.
If you look at his values that kept showing up is well-being,
Well.
well-being, authenticity,
Okay. Okay.
right? Those, yeah, the emotions that showed up is really, I mean, we did see him getting angry, right? As to he expressed anger very he's comfortable in expressing his anger, he's
Sure.
comfortable in expressing whatever he feels about issues and systems and people.
That's right.
He's very, very comfortable with that. So I think he's got a very strong value of justice that he carries.
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Okay.
See
So
that.
he plays the role of a coach.
Mm.
How would you describe his leadership identity there?
Who am I? I think he makes a difference by helping people find themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's helping
Exactly.
people
Businesses,
dig
small
through.
small
Yeah,
businesses, right? Yeah.
yeah, and I think this is my guess. I suspect, I think where Felix is concerned, and I'm sure Felix will call me after this if he listens to this. And I think because of his own experience of having the fall, he can recognize the ego that got
Mm,
him there
mm.
in other
That's right.
people. And I think he's
Exactly.
very determined to help people. So
That's right.
I think he comes across very strong in that way.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I am now much clearer for all our viewers who are logged in. Uh, I'd like to really thank Malar again, right, for sharing this. I hope you have taken away a lot of value from this diagram itself. If you have any questions for Malar, throw it in right now. She can answer that because Malar, you mentioned twice when we both talking about Jonathan and Mylene something about organizational value and personal value.
Yes,
Can you
which
elaborate?
helps me to transition into the next model or the next
Okay.
data that I want to share. Now, a lot of times when we are working with organizations, right? Organizations, you know how I'm not sure whether you all do this in Singapore. When we do culture work, we take everybody in and train them or get them to internalize the corporate culture or the values, organizational values.
Mm, mm.
Right. Now, this is an important study, and I'm not too sure why we don't take this seriously. Right. So, this is from Courses and Personal Leadership Challenge, right? Let me just explain how this
Sure,
works and
please.
then we connect it back to the speakers, right? So, if you look here, commitment. So when we talk about engagement, so let's talk about organizations' output, right? Our business output is equals to, our people's engagement. When we have engaged employees, it equals to the outcomes and results that we get.
Okay.
Which is why we are looking at how do we engage our employees at every
Okay.
level, right? Now,
Okay.
so here they're measuring commitment, and commitment is at the highest is 7, right? Now, what they did is this, right? So if you look at this x-axis, right, 4.9, right? When people are clear about their personal values, their
Hmm.
commitment is 4.9.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
and then let's say you send them for personal development courses and they become more clear about who they are,
Mm.
i.e., their values too. Because who you are, you're serving a value and a purpose that you may not know, right?
Okay.
Now, then you realize their commitment now moves from 4.9 to 6.12, 7 being the highest.
Okay. Okay.
Now, after they are clear about their personal values, so can you see? So they're assuming they're clear about their personal values. You then send them for organizational values. Now, their commitment goes up to 6.26. Can you see that?
Okay.
Now,
Yes.
now, just imagine you send people who are not so clear about their values at 4, right? This
Hmm.
is 4.9. They have low clarity of their values.
Okay. Got it.
And then so it's 4.9, their commitment is 4.9. But when you send them you give them clarity of the organizational values, the commitment actually drops.
Mm.
Okay, and I'll give you an example because we do quite a bit of work in this space, right? Now,
Okay. Okay.
think about it. Whenever we run interventions and programs, right? And whatever programs that you run, if you run a time management program, you are basically selling a value to people, the importance of time,
Okay. Okay.
correct? Right? If you send them for a DEI conference, you're probably, selling them value of people
Mm.
or inclusion or collaboration,
Okay.
right? So we're always actually selling a value. We value something. That's why we want people to acquire the knowledge and skills around it, right? So when we do corporate values program, right, what is interesting is this, right? The moment you're introduced to your corporate values, what do? The first thing you do is you look at your bosses.
To
Are
see
they
what they're
practicing?
demonstrating. Yep. Okay.
Exactly. That's the first thing that happens all the time, right? It's like, I mean, we have children, right? Whenever you tell your children what they should do or shouldn't do, and you try and sell them a value, the first thing the kids do is they don't question the value. They look at you and see how you've not lived the value.
Right. Got it.
And that's what they'll pick on, right? So a lot of times organizations don't realize that people need to understand themselves first before they can connect to the organization, whether it's purpose or values. So this is one study I think that's really, really important. Why when we talk about employee engagement, when we talk about commitment at work, we need to really be focused on whether people know themselves well, how to bring their best out, how to be in
Yes.
flow states, basically.
Okay, you know what, Malan? I think this is a very important study. For our viewers, if you want to pick this up, it's based on this research, right, by Kauser and
Yeah,
Pausner, right? The leadership challenge itself,
yeah,
right? And I think this is a very important study. Yes, and I know from organizational values, the study also talks about if it is very profit driven, you may not get much commitment. But if it is about making an impact, adding value to people, inclusiveness, looking at environment and all that, something that drives people intrinsically also where they can see they can make a contribution, impactful contribution, it drives better behaviors in that sense. I get that. I think you have mentioned something very, very important here, which also is something I'm cracking my head about. You're right to say that it is important for if anything, it is for us to be very clear what our values are.
mm,
I could be saying it wrongly here. You said you have done a lot of workshops around this area. Probably I need to tap on your experience or your
mm,
research, your
mm,
data. Would it be a fair statement to say that many of us
mm.
may not be clear or may not have articulated our values?
Yeah.
Would that be a
I'm not
fair
going to
statement?
use the word. I'm not going to use the word many. But
Okay,
before that, can I just address the one on purpose because you got me excited there?
okay.
All right.
But as long as you
So
come back to this,
I'll come back to this. Yeah, so there's a study. So if you Google up firms of endearment, right? So there was a study done, and today post COVID, this is really important because we know that one way, in fact, the most effective way for any organizations to engage employee is to actually connect them to the purpose of the organization. That's why Simon Sinek's why is so important. Everybody
yep,
loves his talk because it's so inspiring. Now, why? Human beings are meaning making machines,
yes, yes,
right? So we need meaning. We are making meaning anyway. It's a matter of whether we are
that's right.
aware and whether we can articulate that. So firms of
Correct.
endearment actually looked at organizations that were purpose driven. And what they found, if I remember correctly, I think after 10 years, after 10 years, so they have a slow growth, but only after 10 years, their growth and profit is more than 1,000 times more. 1,000.
Okay, okay. This is
All right.
interesting. This is firms of endearment, not
Endearment,
terms, huh?
yes. No, firms. So they they
Firms.
were- they
Nice.
they were comparing this to firms that was good to great, right? So they were comparing it to good to great. So because good to great, the companies grow, right? But
Yes.
they grow immediately. So they were comparing that against firms of endearment. Anyone, if you're interested, you comment here or you DM me. I can send you that particular slide. So look
Okay.
out for firms, or you can just Google firms of endearment. You will find
Firms
them.
of endearment, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right. So that's done. Now coming back to your question, right? Of what was your
No,
question?
no.
Okay, whether we
Sorry.
are
Since you're already also on purpose, let me just anchor one last question on firms of endearment. You said after 10 years, right?
mm,
That's when they show exponential growth. And
yeah.
what is the reason for it? You haven't told us the reason for it.
Oh, because they were focused on purpose. Purpose takes time.
Okay, so it's not profitable purpose, I am
No,
assuming.
no, it's not profitable. Profits and
Uh,
growth is a natural outcome of being focused on the purpose.
and the purpose was, can I assume or can I say confidently that it is always about making impact to humanity in that sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Now, if
great.
you look at any business, right? Any
Hmm.
business that
It is
started
always with
off,
the right
to,
purpose, right?
yeah, to serve a purpose,
That's right.
to serve
A bigger
a particular
purpose.
group. Yeah. So we to make a difference and to serve a particular group of clients, right? And its
Hmm.
purpose is usually positive. You're serving. But
Okay.
eventually, what happens is that we lose track on the purpose and we start
Okay.
focusing on the profit and growth.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Got it.
And you get distracted.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you for sharing that, setting that context. So now going back to that question that you said you don't agree that may not be many people may not be very clear about their personal values.
Yeah, I don't want to use the word many because I
Many,
don't
so
know,
there
but
might
what
be
I
some.
yeah, but I do think that, so this is what I believe, right? I think we all have our values and our purpose. When we don't have a purpose, I think if you've ever been depressed, you will realize that that's the time you lost connection with your purpose. You had
Say that
no
again.
meaning to. If you have ever been depressed,
Depressed. Okay.
think about it. So if you have had an experience of having been depressed, when we are depressed, that's when we lose connection within, i.e., lose the meaning, lose the
Okay.
reason to move on, right?
Okay.
So I think everybody has meaning and we live our values. But whether we are aware
Yes.
or whether we know how to articulate it depends on your exposure.
Okay. So then my question then is, how can everyone logging in here, especially myself, right, be much clearer about our values then?
Okay. Now, I think
What are
any form of
one step
yeah,
or two step, three step, whatever it is?
any form of clarity, you need to really focus on your self-awareness, right?
Yes,
But before
definitely.
that, if you think about how do we identify with our values, very simple. It's really as simple as look, your our values show up based on the choices that we make.
Okay.
Whenever
Values
you
show
make
up
a
based on the
choice,
choices we make.
yeah, whenever we make a choice, we are living a value. The question is, are you aware or not?
Wow. This is
All
very
right.
powerful because the values show up based on the choices we make. And there's a follow up to that. Are we aware about those choices or are we not?
So
Okay.
I'll give you a funny example that I use in class, right? So sometimes when we do team building programs, some leaders will say, "Aya, Malar, why do you have to do it over the weekend? It's our family time." So when they say that, the value that surfaces, they articulate is family,
Mm.
correct? And I will usually say, "Okay, fair enough. It's not fair. I agree with you. I feel." Done all of that, and the question I ask them is, "What do you typically do on a weekend?" So if it's a
Okay.
guy, for example, he might say, "Well, I play golf." A woman might say, "Well, this is when I go and practice self-love. I go to the spa and all of that." Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but is that representative of the family value? No, right?
Okay.
So my question is not so much. So I don't need to tell you what values you should live by, but your choices will tell you that the choices you make is the real value that you value.
Okay. Okay. So it
Can
goes
you
back
see
to the
that?
choices we are making. The
Yeah,
choices we are making, if we become aware of the choices we are making, it will tell us about what we value.
yeah. So we are already making choices. It's what
Mm.
connect, whether you're making the accurate connection or not. So you remember the iceberg again, right? A lot
Yes.
of times, so if I can put back the iceberg, a lot of times we say things that we don't understand about ourselves. So I can say family, my family is important for me, but how much time do I spend with my family? So two things, like two big resources everyone has or chooses
Okay.
from is time and money.
Time. Interesting. Two big
All right.
resources. Okay. Time and money. Okay.
Those who have usually have time may not have money, and those who have money may not have time. But this is the combination that we are always talking about,
Mm.
right? So if anyone who's listening, if you just list down what you do with your time and money, your values will show up.
So what you're saying is, what you're sharing with our viewers today is list down, right? Take out a piece of paper, draw in the center, maybe one side is time, one is time and money, and write down how you're spending that. It tells you what you value.
Correct. And I must say that don't write down how you think you spend it. What you do it at a conscious level. So, for example, right, some parents will tell me, oh, I spend, education is important, right? Education is important, right?
Okay,
And
okay.
they might buy an insurance policy which is for education. But as they have the conversation and I say, okay, you're buying this insurance policy, tell me why. Actually, a lot of times they are buying it because they're afraid that they may not be able to afford it. And sometimes what looks like education as a value is sometimes security is the value. I
Right,
want
right.
my child's future to be secured. And I believe that the security only comes with education.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is people might at a conscious level be saying something, but they're not very clear, right? The choice of words or the clarity is not very clear about exactly what it is. So in this
Correct.
instance is I'm spending money to fund a future education, tertiary funding, but it's really I am more concerned about the security I provide.
Yes.
Now, by being very clear, what would
Mm.
then change for the person?
When you become very clear, so if I use an example, the value actually, if you think about it, right, seemed like education, but the purpose was actually to make sure the child is able to either strive or thrive in the future.
Right.
So,
And
which is
just so if I'm to replace leadership identity to parental identity, which is also leadership, what does
yeah.
that then say about the parent?
That's where your identity lies because the parent might think that I am here to make sure my child has a secured future. If you believe that to be your role and your role identity, if you don't live it, you suffer.
Hmm. Yeah. So I can see why this exercise is powerful for us to all walk away by listing down, right, how we spend our two resources, time and money, and looking at the choices we make
Mhm.
and being a bit more clearer around the language around it to understand
Mm,
what are our values and beliefs there,
mm,
right? And with that identity, right, it becomes easier for
mm,
us to perform
mm.
more authentically. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, perform more authentically. Also, right, because I think if you look at the leaders that we bring on board in Leadership in Flow Asia,
Mhm.
is that are usually people we know personally who
Yep.
who act in a particular way, right? They may not say the right things in the most glamorous way that we like to hear
Sure.
because they have not practiced it, but they just show up, right? And what we realize is that they're very clear about who they are. That's their identity because they're very clear about the purpose they serve and the
Yeah.
values and how the values, belief, emotions, behavior, all of this comes together for them.
Mm.
Now, and I think what's for me, what I think is really important in leadership identity is, when we bring in leaders into organization, we need to be clear whether the leader can serve, whether the leader's identity and the leadership identity can come together to serve the purpose of the organization. They need to come together. If you bring in a leader who's profit centric, not well being centric,
Mm.
and then you expect him or her to look after the people, it's not going to work.
Right.
Because if you follow this iceberg theory, right, it's not congruent. So there'll
Mm.
be incongruence in the leader and the leadership team, which
Right. Right.
then breaks the trust of the people. People can't trust the leaders.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I think a lot more needs to be done in ensuring the leaders that we bring on board are clear about who they are,
Yes.
right? Yeah. And we need a way to identify and know that so that when after we bring them on board, we have a strong leadership identity within the organization to lead
No.
for
Absolutely.
long-term
Absolutely.
sustainability. Yeah,
You
I
know
think
what?
that's
This is a very, very powerful tool and model that you just shared. And it's very true. It's
mm,
important for, just like what you mentioned, if we are very clear about our own values, we'll be more committed to deliver higher, the impact is higher in that sense.
exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for this. And again, last month you shared with us about authentic leadership. Now you're giving us more crystal ideas about leadership identity. I'm very excited about what May will bring about because we have come to the end of our show. Thank you to everyone who is logged in, been watching us, and we'll put this video up on YouTube in the next few days. And I think there's a lot of nuggets that we can take away from this show today. Thank you again, Muller, to help us identify or be very clear on how we can be clear about our values.
That's right.
All right. Thank you very much. And next month, we are kicking off with another show with 3 more different leaders. We've got them all excited, all lined up. And we'll be seeing you next week again. Muller,
And then
any last
we will
words?
no, and then I think after we've spoken to the leaders in May, we will re-gather and see if we can introduce hopefully another process to help us learn from it. So
Exactly.
what we'd appreciate is give us some feedback, give us your input, give us your comments as to whether you find this useful or whether you want other stuff, so that we can keep growing and learning to serve you, because Leadership in Flow Asia is to serve you. With that, this is Malur signing off from Kuala Lumpur.
And this is Ashok signing off from Singapore.
Stay safe.
Till next
Bye.
week. Bye-bye. Have fun.